I first heard of the next speaker, Mr. Peter Smit, uh, while trying to make a booking at the Impossible Dirty Supper restaurant. It was impossible to book. Uh, and ever since then, I've noticed that he has a restaurant just beside mine. And if you haven't been, you must. A restaurant called Underdog, where he focuses on cooking food, including the entirety of all the products that he gets. And it's surprising, actually, because we've borrowed your fridge multiple times and freezer for a lack of space. And the first time I walked into it, not knowing exactly what you did, I was shocked by a couple of huge animal carcasses and several ducks just hanging there. I'm like, wow, we're doing this here? And so without further ado, and we're going to have a small introduction from Peter and then a panel discussion. So do fire questions away as you receive them.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, so I'm Peter. Hi. I probably will say some things that are going to insult some people, and I apologize. Thanks, Ivan, for helping me with this. And thanks, Ollie, for not calling it nose to tail. I really hate that term, especially in Singapore. There's no such thing. I call it whole animal butchery. I don't call it nose to tail because basically we can't do it here. There's so many rules and restrictions. I'm going to sit down because I'm tired. So basically in Singapore there's so many rules and regulations about what we can use and what we can't use. For example, I can't use pig's blood. I can buy pig's heart, I can buy pig's liver, I can buy pig's kidney, but I can't use pig's blood because of some rule. Not even dry blood. So for me, that's not nose to tail. When I first moved to Singapore, I guess Singapore is a country that likes to kind of copy each other in some degree. It's hard to be original. And for me, my background, I don't have an exciting story and a romantic story about how I became a chef. The PG version is I was trying to impress a girl. The R18 version is I was trying to do something else. But, you know, I fell in love with, we sat at home and we cooked together and I fell in love with it. I don't know why. I'd never cooked in my life before I was 17. Long story short, I moved to London. I started doing a lot of whole animal butchery at a restaurant called PitQ. Kind of blew my mind, changed the whole way that I looked at everything that I do. We use small farms down in Cornwall, we reared our own pigs, and we actually did proper nose to tail where we would get in the fresh blood and make our own blood sausage and everything else. Fast forward to coming to Singapore, there was a bit of a gap. Everyone kind of uses the same ingredients. It's very, very hard to not get something that someone else has. And for me, I love butchery. I love being able to try and utilize everything that we can. As the last two guys, like Matt and Olive both said, everything comes down to money. It's so expensive here to have something that you can't utilize every part of it. For example, the last lamb that I bought for our dinner, it cost $430 to buy in a just under 20 kilo lamb. So for me as a chef, trying to make as much money as I can for my restaurant to survive, I have to figure out a way to use every part of it. So for us at Underdog, for those who haven't been, we run on two different menus. We have a standard menu, which doesn't really change too much, but we kind of use our byproducts a little bit. You know, we have pig's heads on the menu, and we use all the duck livers from when we get in the whole ducks. And then we have a daily changing menu, which can range from 20 to 30 items. And generally that's written on the fly. So as a lot of people know, I'm not very organized. And I change things last minute a lot, in the nightmare of everyone else. But that will change. So basically what we'll do at the restaurant is we'll get in a whole lamb, a whole pig. The only thing we don't get in whole is beef, because even though I have a big-ish cool room, I don't have that big of a cool room. And my kitchen is tiny and it's very gypsy. Whoops. So basically what we'll do is we'll get in the whole animal. We'll break it down as we can't age it, and for what we think will work best for the night, I guess. So as Ivan said, the first time he walked in, Yeah, I think I had like a whole lamb, whole pig, a lot of ducks, seafood. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a bit shocked that I got asked to speak because I don't think that anything I do is that special. For me, it's just me being a chef and trying to do what I can do. There's no magical story about why we do it. It's just more fun to have a whole animal and play around with, and to have something a little bit more unique and different than what a lot of other restaurants in Singapore can offer. We're not the first whole animal butchery restaurant. We're not going to be the last. But I think the way that we're trying to drive into it by using almost everything, I'd say. We throw things in the bin. It's the fact of life. But we try and maximize everything we can do. So in my cool room, I have a fat corner where when we do all our butchery, we render all the fats, and we try and use that through all of our meat. Vegetarian, not very welcome. Well, not welcome, but not very accommodated for at Underdog. I once got told that I need to have more vegetarian dishes on the menu, so I cooked hispy cabbage in confit in chicken fat just to prove a point. I'm quite stubborn, and if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong. But yeah, so we try and use everything. Even our mother sauce or our jus is never a standard recipe. If we're boning out lamb for that day, then it's a lamb stock. If we're boning out the chickens or the ducks, then it's a mix of everything. Our sourdough is baked in chicken fat, which is fucking delicious. Sorry about swearing. But
It's a safe space.
Sorry?
Safe space.
Safe space?
Yeah.
Are you sure? You've heard me talk before, right? So, yeah, I mean, for me, there was just a bit of a gap in Singapore. A lot of people say that they do nose to tail. But you can't actually do that if you've got one cut of meat on your menu for the whole time. So, and just because you're using maybe a whole fish, but the rest of your menu is board-in cuts, like that to me doesn't make any sense. You can't preach it and not actually follow through with it. But yeah, I'm going to get Ivan up to fire some questions at me, because otherwise I'll just ramble.
Rambling is also good. We're both ramblers.
Probably not good.
I would challenge your notion there that you're not an organized person, because I've rarely have chats with somebody that just thinks so much on their feet. And the way that you describe your practice in some ways is very much about that. You say it's very hard to plan with that level of consistency, and you change things over and over again. Do you think in some ways a particular answer to some of these problems is to really not just try to force your way into things and allow the product to kind of dictate some of that direction?
Yeah, I think so. We kind of just work around with what we have. So it's, I've started using the farms in Cameron Highlands a bit more now. And then we just want, if we have an awesome piece of meat that we've dry aged for 3 weeks, then we just want that to sing. And there's no point trying to hide something. It's just let it sing for itself, I guess.
And how, in the act of doing this, how has the market, the folks, your diners, the people that come to eat and support, how do they interact with things that perhaps they haven't seen before, or they might find slightly odd or novel or different? And what do you do to kind of cushion some of that if there's any backlash?
I've actually been very, very surprised about not as much backlash, I guess. One of our confronting dishes, I guess. So a lot of people serve suckling pig. It's all chopped up nice. You might get a little bit of the head. For us at Underdog, we use a lot of pig's heads. So I literally just give you half a head on a plate. It's smoked. We don't even give you cutlery. We just give you a pair of black gloves. And the whole idea is that you have to rip into the head and you have to break it apart to kind of get that, I guess, medieval feel. I want people to be confronted, because food doesn't just come prepackaged. It doesn't come in a plastic bag. There's an element of an animal that everyone can relate to, and I think that you need to have that relatability, so that it's kind of, it opens your eyes a little bit. You know, we do duck heart sausages because why not? It's, you know, we just started doing like pork liver sausage because no one really does that kind of thing. We want to take something that you have that's familiar, but kind of give you a little bit of a oh shit moment.
It's almost like in the conversely there in the fine dining market that we're trying to create as many layers of separation between the guest and the product, right? They're manipulating it to the point where perhaps it's something else entirely. And it seems to me that you're trying to do the exact opposite in some ways, like to annult and highlight the product in its best potential. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. You know, like we take a lot of time and pride in the like animals that we get. Like our ducks, for example, they come from Malaysia. They come in live and then they're slaughtered here. But we'll dry age them for 2 weeks. It's, you know, there's no point in us doing our practice of aging it and trying to get nicer products and then just trying to mask it. For me, it's just food on a plate, like sometimes in a bowl. It's just there. It's just I want you to taste what we've done and what it should be.
I'm just reminded of Pratik's conversation, the question of authenticity at some point in time, but it feels very authentic. If there was ever the use of a good, authentic word, that is authentic, right? It's real, it's there, it's accessible.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, again, it's just me just doing what I love. I've been a chef for 22, 23 years now. I've been fortunate enough to work in some cool places. Just trying to make the best of what I can with what I can get, I guess.
I have a couple of questions here, but...
If one's from Min, I don't want to answer
it. Given the restrictions in Singapore, what makes it an interesting place for you as a whole animal chef? I mean, it is a lot of work, really, and why continue with that effort? Do you see that changing or providing a future potential?
I mean, it comes back to what I said before, like I'm very stubborn, so people have told me that it's not possible since I moved here. Almost 5 years ago. I actually pitched Underdog to another chef in 2019 when I first moved here, and they just looked at me and laughed and said, "That's not possible here." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to prove you wrong." I think it will start to pick up. You know, there are a lot of restaurants that are using whole animals to some degree, like Burn Ends, for example, perfect example, right? Dave's an amazing chef, and what he's built is incredible. And he's lucky enough that he can kind of shift animals to different parts of animals to different areas. I think once people kind of get into the groove and want to kind of step out of the bubble of what Singapore actually is, then I think that there'll be a few more restaurants like this. Well, I hope. You know, we've had a conversation before about not being able to have a fine dining restaurant that runs on a whole animal. So now in my head, I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong. It's, you know, the next step of Dirty Supper is going to be like a chef's table that is a whole animal. It's, you know, from that moment that I walked out of Nuri, I was like, no, you're wrong. I'm gonna prove you wrong. So, you know, I like that, and I feel like in Singapore, because of the way that Singapore is, you'll have other people that are starting to do that as well. Well, I hope.
Yeah. Is there anything that hasn't worked when you're considering using
So
the
many
entirety
things.
of, and could you share some of that? Because I feel we might all derive some laughter out.
Yeah. Depends. I could probably get in trouble for this. No on film. But basically, you know, blood's illegal. We tried to make something with our byproducts of which may or may not have included pig's blood, and that was a complete failure. You know, we made it. We thought it would be exactly the same, and we tried our different ways, and it was terrible. There are some things that guests just look at and they're like, oh, what is this guy trying? It's just too confronting, I guess. But yeah, nothing catastrophe.
It seems like being up for a challenge is very much a part of your personality and how you interact with things. I remember in that conversation that we were having, it's like it's incredibly difficult, and you're like, oh yeah, watch me.
Yeah.
But it's also that attitude translates into this immediate interaction you have with ingredients and why perhaps things work, because you can't avoid the challenge in the day-to-day reality when you're working with products and the restrictions you have. Do you have something to say about perhaps the aversion of risk and challenge that we notice in the industry now? Like, it's quite common for us to see a very repetitive, photogenic, same color palette technique. I have this thing with tarts. You probably heard me talk about this a million times, but it drives me nuts. Nothing wrong with the tart, but we don't all have to do one and then stack a bunch of stuff on top of it. But do you feel that there is some of it like that there's a sense of safety pursuit or aversion of risk and challenge that for you is almost what you feed on?
Yeah, I mean, people, unfortunately in our industry these days, people want the accolades, or a lot of people want the accolades, so they stick with what's safe. They don't trust themselves enough to be able to get the accolades without following a certain guideline, I guess. Yeah, for me, you know, accolades are great, accolades are fun, but just do whatever makes you happy in food-wise. And essentially that's what I do at Underdog. Underdog and Dirty Supper is my space to just do whatever I want, whenever I want, within reason. And, you know, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, I'm really sorry. But you can't please everyone, and if you want to go to places that follow the certain guidelines of what you're going to get, then, you know, those places are easy to come by.
Yeah, absolutely. A very practical question here. I love that one. Which beast gives you the biggest bang for buck to serve, like from a financial sense now?
Financial point?
Yeah.
I guess a duck. You know, for us, getting in duck, there's more. I mean, pork and lamb and everything else is super expensive. I bought in half a pig for the Kita event, and it was $350 for half a pig. Like, that's crazy. For me to have to make that money back, I have to sell it for nearly like $1,200 or something in every aspect of it. A duck, unfortunately, people will pay a lot of money for duck. It's just the nature of the beast, right? They'll see duck and they'll think it's fancy and it's special and everything else. So for us, you know, sometimes we serve duck head. We take out the necks, we confit down the necks. We'll make a duck sausage with the neck skin. We'll take off the wings and they'll go into our stocks. The same with the carcass. The breasts will always sell separate. And the legs will either confit down or that will become our sausage. And then we keep all the gizzards whenever we can get the gizzards, and then the duck livers, we always have duck liver on. So we can kind of utilize a lot of that, and duck is one of those things that we can get maybe around 70-75% of the product and be able to use that in entirety. You know, lamb, I can't use the heads, I can't use any lamb offal, so you know, that's part of an animal, and we're still getting charged in some degree for that. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say duck, and we use a lot of the local squid. So we only use local seafood as much as possible. I'd say about 90-95% of our stuff is all local seafood, or local. So yeah, for the squid, you know, we can break it down. The heads, we serve a dish called best bits, just because for me that's the best bit of the squid. Then we'll serve the body, we'll serve the wings in a separate one. I've been saving up the wings for the last 2 months just so I could do a squid noodle dish for the Kita dinner with Matt. You know, so we keep all these little trim bits. The insides we're trying to start to make our own garums and everything else. So it's kind of using all of that as well.
Very nice. I think we have time for one more question. Thank you. That's a good observation here. But there is the practice of eating whole animals is quite common around the world, and especially in Asia. And if we all been to family dinners in a Chinese restaurant, for example, you have a large fish on the plate or the large duck, as we're talking about. And the question here is asking if you feel that there is some form of cultural, that people are more prone to accept that here, or do you think it's just a matter of financials really? Do you think potentially the resistance is cultural, if there is one, or if it's just mostly a finance thing?
I think it's probably more of a finance thing. Everything in Singapore is very expensive, as we all know as chefs and punters and everything else. Culturally, you know, you go into the hawkers and you see a pig organ soup. Like, there's no shady area of, oh, I'm not going to eat it. But I feel like a bit of the cultural, if there is one, is just you don't want to go into a restaurant and pay the prices that they're paying, or that they're charging for what you can get. So I think that's the only cultural kind of difference, is that the money aspect, but again, it comes back to financial. If I can go to a coffee shop and get a pig organ soup for $5, $6, why do I want to go into a restaurant and get a pig tongue for $18? You have to factor in, or a lot of people don't actually factor in of, okay, so in my kitchen alone, I have 3 chefs, me including 2 others. So we're a super skeleton crew, but I still have to pay them. I still have to pay for my cool room and freezers running. I have to pay for the charcoal and the wood that we burn. I have to pay for all of this for you to get that. So it comes back to the financial aspect of, I don't want to pay for this, even though I'll eat it, but I just don't want to pay for it.
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
No, it makes absolute sense, and I think we'll come back to this point time and time again. It's impossible to talk about operating a better restaurant without talking about the financial equation and closing. And I think we can do as much as we want to, but on the receiving end, I think a larger conversation is perhaps in order. Thank you very much, Pete.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Well done, sir.